When I called my son Max to inquire when his wedding was actually going to take place, I did not anticipate that the response would be given by another. Lena, my daughter-in-law, stared at me straight into the eyes, her lips curving into a cold, smug smile. "Oh, we were married yesterday," she said quietly. "We only invited special people." Those words struck me like a pail of ice water. Special people. For 3 years, I'd paid their $500 a month rent. I'd purchased every item of furniture they had, filled their fridge when they had nothing, and paid for every emergency that crossed their path. But in that one sentence, I understood. I was not one of the special people. I stood there immobilized in the center of my own living room, holding the phone as if it were made of lead. My son couldn't even make eye contact with me while Lena settled into the sofa that I had purchased with my own hard-earned money. On my closet rod was the pale pink wedding dress I'd picked out for her. $200 in hope and anticipation never to be worn in the bright light of day. I'd even selected coordinating shoes, envisioning how I'd look standing alongside my son in their wedding portraits. But those wedding portraits would never feature me. I had spent weeks arranging every last detail. I had saved $1,000 as a dowry, phoned my sister Diana in Chicago to tell her the good news, even cleaned every inch of my home, hoping they would drop by to toast afterwards. And then just 4 poison words destroyed everything. Only special people. Max finally came out from under his hair, his voice rigid, practiced, and strange. "Mom, it was a small thing, just us and the witnesses." But I already knew he was lying, because I saw everything on social media. Lena's parents smiling beside them, her siblings raising champagne glasses, her expensive white dress, the same one I'd unknowingly helped foot the bill for with the $800 I'd given her just a month prior. I saw everything I wasn't supposed to see. 7 days later, exactly 7 days since that silent humiliation, the phone rang again. This time Lena's voice was different. Gone was the arrogance, the superior tone. Now she sounded desperate. "Renata," she said, her voice trembling, "the rent's due. The landlord's threatening eviction if we don't pay. You must have forgotten the transfer." I sat quietly for a few seconds, recalling each time I had run to the bank to assist them. Each time I had foregone my own needs so they would not be struggling. Each time I had eaten plain rice and beans just so they could have more. And now, after everything, after being shut out of my own son's wedding, she had the nerve to call me like nothing ever occurred. "Lena," I finally responded, my voice steady, calm, perhaps too steady. "Didn't I tell you? I only assist special people." The quiet that followed was so profound I could hear my own heart beating. For the first time in years, it wasn't me shaking. It was her. "Renata, I don't get it," she stuttered. "We've always meant something to you. You're like a second mother to me." Lies. Sweet, deceitful lies spoken in that gentle voice she reserved only for times she wanted something. That same voice she used to request funds for her wedding gown, their honeymoon, the rings, all the things I spent without knowing I would never see the ceremony wherein they were given. I had tiptoed around for years, weighing each word, each present, each action, just to receive a sliver of love from my own son. I was the ideal mother, the silent provider, the unseen helper. But that one sentence, "only special people," stirred something within me that had lain dormant far too long. That evening, I sat and did the arithmetic. 3 years' worth of rent, food, presents, emergencies, and fancies. More than $20,000. $20,000 out of my retirement, out of the savings my late husband left me. Money that was intended to spend and enjoy in my golden years. And what did I receive in return? Being treated like a stranger on my soul son's wedding day. That evening, after I hung up the phone, I cried on my bed. But they were not tears of sadness, tears of release. Tears full of years of anger, exhaustion, and humiliation I swallowed in silence. I wept for each moment that they forced me to believe that my love was too much, my presence a bother, my money the only thing that had worth that I could offer. I wept for the silly mother I had been. The one who lost herself in attempting to be irreplaceable to individuals who used her as if she were replaceable. By morning, something within me had changed. It wasn't pain any longer. It was clarity. Cold, keen, unshakable clarity. I stood before the bathroom mirror, gazing at the same tired eyes, the same lines etched from years of love lavished in vain. But this time, there was something different in my mirror image, a stillness of hardness, a sheen of strength I hadn't glimpsed in decades. I strolled into the kitchen and made coffee, just as I did every morning for 40 years. But today, I didn't grab for my phone to text Max. I didn't look for a message from him, or an apology that would never arrive. For the first time in a long, long time, I was my own first thought of the morning. I sat at the same kitchen table where I'd mapped their birthdays, tallied their bills, and wept silently while they disregarded me. But today that table would see something different. I set out my checkbook, my bank statements, and a pen, and began totaling the real cost of my blind love. Monthly rent, $500 for 36 months, $18,000. Groceries and supplies, about $200 a month, $7,200. Gifts, birthdays, anniversaries, Christmas, $3,000. Lena's medical emergencies, $800. The car loan they never paid off, $2,500. Air conditioner repairs in their apartment, $600. Living room furniture, $1,200. I added the numbers slowly, carefully, painfully. $33,400. $33,400. That was the cost of my love, and my blindness. Money taken from my pension, my husband's inheritance, years of work and saving. Money I had wasted to make two adults comfortable, while they could not even pretend to respect me. The phone rang just then. Max's name appeared on the screen. Once, that moment would have made my heart pound. I would have dropped whatever I was doing, praying he was calling to say sorry, to tell me that it was all a misunderstanding. But this time, I let it ring. Once, twice, 3 times, until the quiet came back. I took a sip of my coffee. Unfazed. Composed. Unshaken. 10 minutes passed and then it rang again. Lena. I didn't pick that up either. Then a text from Max. Mom, please pick up. We need to discuss. I gazed at the words for a second, then deleted the message without responding. At 2 o'clock, I went out for a walk, something I hadn't done in months on my own. Ordinarily, every errand had been for them. The bank, the supermarket, the pharmacy. But today, my only motivation was basic. Because I wanted to. I drove by the park where I would take Max as a kid. I could still envision that little boy. The one who clung to me and told me I was the world's best mom. When had he become this man who viewed me as nothing but an ATM with emotions? When did I begin thinking love could be purchased? I continued walking until I reached the bank. Through the glass doors, I glimpsed the branch manager, Mr. Klein. He smiled and waved at me, the same person who had handled each transfer I ever made for Max and Lena. He must have observed my balance decrease month after month, year after year. I strode directly into his office. Mr. Klein, I whispered. I need to stop the automatic payments I've arranged. He stared at me, startled. For 3 years, those payments have gone out with the regularity of a clock. Are you certain, Mrs. Richter? Did something occur? His concern was soft, sincere. More sincere than any concern my son had exhibited toward me in months. I smiled weakly and nodded. Yes, I said. Something did occur. I finally woke up. I want to cancel everything, I said to Mr. Klein firmly. And please tell me how to safeguard my accounts. I don't want anyone else to be able to access my money again. He nodded respectfully and set about processing the request. While he typed, my phone began buzzing again, first Max, then Lena, then Max again. It was almost spooky, as if they could feel their financial lifeline slipping away. In no time, I switched off the phone entirely. Later, a few minutes after that, Mr. Klein gave me a file of papers. Mrs. Richter, he said in his gentle manner. Excuse me for mentioning this, but I've only known you these many years, and I've noticed how supportive you've been to your family. I only hope you're not being pushed into these changes. His words threw me, so sympathetic, so sincere. This stranger, who had known me only from transactions and signatures, cared more genuinely about my well-being than did my own son. I smiled gently. No, Mr. Klein, I said. Nobody's coercing me. As a matter of fact, I've finally ceased coercing myself. When I emerged from that bank, I felt light as air, as if I'd shed years of guilt and responsibility. For the first time in years, my money, my time, my peace, were mine again. Memories washed in as I walked home. All the vacations I never took because I was saving for them. The social lives I abandoned because I was always on call for their so-called emergencies. The hobbies I had forsaken because treating myself felt selfish. All those tiny sacrifices that had silently erased me. But not anymore. As I walked around the corner onto my street, I stopped dead. 3 cars were parked in front of my house, Max's, Lena's, and a third one I couldn't recognize. I could see movement inside through the window. My blood turned cold. They had keys. Keys I had given them, hoping that someday, when I was old and helpless, they would take care of me as I had taken care of them. I breathed deep and composed myself. Time, the first real test of this new me. I pushed open the door and entered. The sight in front of me is one I will never forget. Max sat on my couch, his face in his hands. Lena paced back and forth like a caged animal. And at my dinner table, my table, was an unfamiliar man digging through my private documents. What is going on here? I demanded, more loudly than I had planned. All 3 of them turned to me as if I was the intruder in my own home. Lena spoke first, her voice full of feigned worry. Renata, thank heaven you're here. We have to talk. This is Mr. Fisher, from the law firm we called regarding your situation. My situation? I said, my voice collected but knife-sharp. And what is my situation in any case? I'm doing very well, thank you. Max finally met my gaze. The boy who used to look at me with love was gone, his eyes now full of panic. Mother, he started. We went to the bank, and they said you canceled all the transfers. Mr. Klein said you even froze our access to your accounts. We have no idea why you would do that. The man in the gray suit, mid-50s, practiced smile, rose and offered his hand. Mrs. Richter, he replied smoothly. I'm Dr. Fisher, an attorney specializing in family law. Your children have been worried about your mental health and requested I evaluate the situation. I did not shake his hand. Rather, I went directly over to the table and picked up my papers, my personal papers, from beneath his fingers. These are my records, I told him coldly. And you don't have any right to handle them without my authorization. Mom, Max said, that patronizing tone creeping into his voice. The same one he used whenever he wanted to make me doubt myself. We're worried about you. You've been acting irrationally. Cutting us off, ignoring our calls. This isn't like you. Then Lena stepped closer, her face soft with fake sympathy. Renata, sweetie, she crooned. We realize that you're under a tremendous amount of stress. Perhaps the loneliness is affecting you more than you think. At your age, a bit of confusion is absolutely normal. Confusion. That one word rang through my head. Biting, brutal, intentional. And in that instant, I knew precisely what they were attempting to accomplish. In that moment, everything was made clear. They hadn't come with the lawyer to assist me. They'd come with him to steal from me. Their intention wasn't concern, it was control. They wanted me to be declared mentally incompetent, so they could take all that I had, my house, my savings, my liberty. The same daughter-in-law who had previously said I was special enough to attend their wedding now regarded me as a senile encumbrance. I am not confused, I stated firmly and coldly. I am clearer than I've been in years. And all of you are going to leave my house. Right now. Mr. Fisher moved closer, his voice soothing and condescending. That practice courtesy lawyers employ when they believe they're dealing with someone vulnerable. Mrs. Richter, he murmured. I know this must be distressing, but your children are entitled to step in if they feel that your financial sense is compromised. They've recorded quite a few behaviors of concern. Concerning behaviors? The laugh that burst from my throat was harsh, bitter, almost cruel. Such as what? Determining that my money is mine? Opting not to pay for the lives of 2 adults who treat me like dirt. Lena leapt up from her chair, her face beet red with rage. We never treated you like that. You're like family. All that you have will belong to us one day in any case. We're just accelerating the process. There it was. The truth raw, ugly, and naked. To them, I was dead already. And this was not love or concern talk. It was inheritance. Getting their reward early when I was still alive. Out, I said, gesturing strongly toward the door. All three of you. Leave my house. Max got to his feet, his jaw clenched with rage, with the same look he had as a child when he didn't get what he wanted. Mom, we can't be left behind. We have responsibilities. The rent, the car, the credit card you co-signed. You can't cut us off like this. I stiffened, my voice rising for the first time. Who says I can't? For years I paid rent on a house not my own. I stocked fridges in houses where I was never really part of the family. I supported a lifestyle that never had space for me within it. Mr. Fisher quietly opened his briefcase and pushed a folder in front of him. Mrs. Richter, he stated tactfully, we've drawn up a few papers to make this transition easy. A power of attorney that would allow your children to take charge of your finances. It's temporary, naturally, until you're improved. I didn't even look at the folder. I took it up and tossed it right into the trash. The only transition going on here, I said, my tone like steel, is yours from the front door to my home. Lena started to weep, but not tears of sorrow. No, tears of rage, of frustration, entitlement withheld. You can't do this to us, Renata. We were relying on you. We made arrangements. We spent money, because we thought we could count on your backing. Backing? I echoed. You mean my money? Because not once, did any of you care about my happiness, or my health, or my loneliness. You cared only about what I could give you. I stepped back as Max came toward me. Gone was the little boy who used to rush into my arms after a nightmare. Standing in front of me at this moment was a 35-year-old man, desperate, selfish, and angry that his meal ticket was not going along quietly. Mom, he spoke softly, attempting to sound penitent. We did wrong. The wedding, it was a misunderstanding. Lena was anxious. I was stressed out. We can make this better, if you would just begin to be reasonable again. Reasonable. That word once shattered me. Now it just made me tougher. I gazed at the two of them, my children, their faces familiar, but strangers nonetheless, and understood something I should have grasped years and years ago. They were no longer my responsibility, and for the first time in decades, I was free to live for myself. Reasonable. The word slipped from my tongue like venom. Being reasonable consisted of paying for their lives and being treated like a stranger. It consisted of swallowing the hurt of not being allowed to participate in the day when my one and only son was getting married. Mr. Fisher sat down to pack his papers with the detached determination of a man used to dealing with many refusals. Mrs. Richter, he said icily, this is not the end. Your family has legal recourse. If your choices seem crazy or are the result of mental deterioration, a judge can decree guardianship. His words hit like a blow. This was no longer a family fight. It was a legal ambush, a move to take away my independence, my dignity, my very name. I glared at him in the eyes. Mr. Fisher, I said sharply, you might want to do some research before you threaten a 71-year-old woman who has handled her money perfectly for 40 years. A woman who was left with her son after she lost her husband. A woman who worked honestly all her life, and who, until last week, was supporting two independent, capable adults. So please, go ahead and try me. Lena's pretended tears disappeared. Her face set in a hard, unrecognizable coldness. This isn't over, Renata, she spat. We have rights and lawyers too. Perfect, I replied, my voice firm. Rent all the lawyers you can afford. But this time, pay for them yourselves. Mine aren't for sale anymore. The three of them strode to the door, their pride hurt, their silence a shout of resentment. Before they left, Max turned around once more to look at me. Mom, he growled. This is going to turn out badly for you. You'll be completely alone, with no one to look after you when you need it most. I looked back at him, serene and sure. Max, I already am alone. The difference now is only that it's by choice, not your abandonment. When the door closed behind them, my house was filled with the loveliest silence I ever heard. It wasn't empty. It was liberty. The sweet sound of peace after so many years of silence. That night, I did not sleep. But not out of sorrow, out of adrenaline. I was alive for the first time in decades. I lay awake in bed, mind clear, heart calm, scheming my next move like a general at war. If Max and Lena thought they wanted a fight, they would get one, but not out of rage, out of strategy. By 6 o'clock in the morning, I was clothed, alert, and prepared to move. My first destination: the law offices of Mr. Weber, the lawyer who had assisted me some years ago with my husband's will. Unlike the snake they introduced to my home, Mr. Weber was an upright man, reputable for standing up to abuse of seniors. Having heard attentively, he nodded seriously. "Mrs. Richter," he told her, "what your children attempted to do is sadly all too frequent. It's known as elder financial abuse. And yes, it's a federal offense. That they entered your house and touched your private papers without your permission only makes your case stronger." His words struck me like light through fog. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't imagining things. What they had done was actual abuse. But it also frightened me, because it made me realize things were worse than I had imagined. Mr. Weber sat forward. "We'll document everything," he told me. "Every transfer, every gift, every money demand. Then we'll revise your will to shield your assets from any further manipulation." We worked for hours going over records, every dollar, every sacrifice that had been forgotten. When he saw the figure, he whistled softly. $33,400, he said. "Mrs. Richter, you could have seen the world with that money. Lived well. Enjoyed retirement. Instead, you paid for the lives of 2 grown adults who wouldn't even invite you to their wedding." After I left his office, I was no longer the same woman. I exited with a plan and purpose. Step 1. Replace every lock in my home. Step 2. Get a security system, cameras, alarms, the whole 9 yards. Step 3. Open a new bank account, somewhere my children had no connections. And Step 4. Start living the life I'd been postponing for 40 years. My next stop was the hardware store. The owner, Mr. Sommer, had known me for years, mostly because I'd always been there buying tools and repairs for Max and Lena's apartment. He looked up and smiled. "Another emergency for your son?" he asked kindly. "Not this time," I said softly with pride. "This time, it's for my home. I require the best locks you have." He blinked, taken aback, but did not argue. As I was looking at the choices, his son Ethan, a young man who worked with house security systems, came in. It was destiny. For the first time in years, things were no longer something that happened to me. I was finally the one choosing, deciding, building a fortress not just around my house, but around my heart. "Ethan," I told him, "I want an entire security system, cameras, sensors, the works. Cost doesn't matter." He nodded, composed and professional, as his father went over the paperwork. For once, I was in charge of my own security, my own life. Walking out the door, I felt my phone vibrate as a call from an unknown number came through. I ignored my better judgment and answered. "Renata, it's Lena," a voice I knew called out. "Don't hang up, please. Let's talk like civilized human beings." "Talk," I replied, my voice monotonous and tired. "Listen," she started in a gentle voice. "I know you're angry about the wedding. It was an error. We both wish we hadn't done it. Max and I want to make it right with you. How about an evening dinner, just us 3? We can do it at your place, cook together like old times." The condescension in her tone was so thinly disguised it was almost ridiculous. "Lena," I said, "how much rent do you owe?" There was silence, the quiet that speaks the truth. 2 months, she confessed finally. $1,000. "But I'm not phoning for that, Renata. We miss you." "Do you miss me or my money?" She paused, then with surprising candor said, "Both." I almost respected the candor in her brazenness. "Lena," I told her sternly, "if I was that important, why wasn't I important enough to attend your wedding? Why is it that you never call unless you need something? When did you last ask how I was?" Her silence was answer enough. 3 years, I went on. You used me as an ATM with emotions. You exploited me, dismissed me, degraded me, and then informed me that I wasn't special enough to have a place in my own son's life. Now that the money's lost, you suddenly remember love. Renata, please. There is no please, I interrupted icily. You had your choice when you excluded me from your wedding. Now I'm making mine. And I hung up, then turned the phone off altogether. That day wasn't for interruptions. It was my day of freedom. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in years. I visited the beauty salon. I'd always called to cancel because Max and Lena needed something. But today, Mrs. Richter, my stylist Cynthia exclaimed in surprise. What a lovely surprise. I thought you'd forgotten us. I didn't forget you, Cynthia, I told her, smiling. I just forgot that I need to take care of myself too. I indulged myself in the works: haircut, color, manicure, pedicure. Each snip of the scissors was a cutting away from the past. I spent money on me for the first time in years, without guilt, without hesitation. When Cynthia had finished, she grinned at me in the mirror. You look beautiful, Mrs. Richter. But above all, you look free. Did something wonderful happen? Yes, Cynthia, I replied, grinning at my own reflection. I finally mastered the art of saying no. When I got home, there was a car parked outside my house. My heart accelerated. For a second, I had thought Max and Lena had returned with an army. But when I drew near, I noticed an old lady sitting on my porch steps. Mrs. Richter? She inquired softly. My name is Eleanor Brooks, your neighbor. I overheard angry voices yesterday and got concerned. Are you all right? Her tact moved me more than I anticipated. This lady, all but a stranger to me, took more concern than my own relatives. Come on in, Mrs. Brooks, I said warmly. I'll brew some coffee. You'll never believe what I have to tell you. We sat down together, and I recounted it all. She listened, truly listened, her eyes soft with compassion. When I was done, she leaned across the table, tears in her eyes. You did the right thing, Mrs. Richter. I went through the same thing with my daughter 5 years ago. I figured if I gave her money, I was showing her love. But when I quit, she tried to guilt-trip me, threaten me, and then 6 months later, she returned, not for money but to apologize. Now, we have a genuine relationship again. Her words were a salve to my tired soul. Do you ever think Max and Lena will get it? I asked softly. Perhaps yes, she replied. Perhaps no. But that's not your job anymore. Your only responsibility now is to yourself. Live Mrs. Richter. Live for you. That evening, I slept differently. Not questioning whether Max and Lena had paid rent. Not caring whether they ate or were mad at me. For the first time in years, my thoughts belonged to me, my plans, my dreams, my life. And I slept, peacefully, deeply, like a person who had finally recovered her soul. The morning after, Ethan and Mr. Sommer came promptly. They relocked the door and started putting in the security system. My phone continued to ring with calls from anonymous numbers. Lena again for sure. But I had developed a potent new skill, ignoring what didn't warrant my energy. Mrs. Richter, Ethan said with a grin as he tightened the final camera. This system puts you in complete control. You'll be able to see exactly who's at your doorstep no matter where you are. And if someone attempts to break in, the police are called immediately. I grinned at the irony. I was installing a security system to guard myself against my own son. But somehow, it didn't hurt anymore. It just made sense, a last act of self-preservation. Because sometimes peace isn't forged from forgiveness. Sometimes, it's forged from finally locking the door. As Ethan and Mr. Sommer completed the installation, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my sister, Diana, in Chicago. For so long, our phone calls had become fiscal updates in the guise of family conversations. I'd gloat about Max and Lena, how successful they were, how proud I was to be supporting them, not ever realizing I was actually just reciting ledger entries of my own exploitation. When Diana replied, her voice was surprised, nearly tender. Renata. Sister, it's been ages. How are you? I smiled weakly. Better than good, Diana. I've finally come to my senses. And I informed her of everything. The secret wedding. The humiliation. The lawyer. And the ultimate decision to cut off the money. And the manipulation that went with it. Diana listened silently, never interrupting. When I was done, her reaction took me aback. Renata, about time. I locked up. About time. Yes, she murmured. Each time we talked, It hurt me to have to hear you quantify love in dollars. You were always giving and giving, yet they never gave back to you. I wanted to say something, but didn't know how. What is it? I quavered. Max never said nice things about you at family gatherings, she told him. It was always, Mom helped me do this, or Mom purchased me that. Never I miss my mom, or I love my mom. You were his provider, not his parent. She cut deep with her words, but it was the kind of hurt that heals, the burn before the washing. And Lena, Diana went on. She used only the future tense when she mentioned you. When Renata passes away, we'll renovate her house. When we inherit, we'll put money into the business. It's as though they were just waiting for you to pass away so that they could move in. I felt chilled, as though someone had run ice water through my body. All those years, I thought I was constructing their bliss. In real life, I was simply investing in their impatience for my return. I sat alone in the kitchen after we got off the phone, gazing into silence. 35 years of mothering, 3 years of emotional blackmail, and the desolate reality. I was now nothing more than a $100,000 barrier between my son and his next comfort. The doorbell rang. I caught a look at the new security camera video. It was Eleanor, my lovely neighbor, with a mug of coffee in her hand. When I opened the door, she smiled. I thought you might need some company today, she said. We sat in the living room together, and she told more of her own story. Same thing my daughter used to say to yours. Eleanor laughed bitterly. You're like a second mother to me. Or we're special to you. Those are quotes right out of the emotional manipulation manual. I laughed in spite of myself. Do you really think there is such a handbook? Not on official sanction, she replied. But they all appear to read from the same chapter. Chapter 1, make her feel needed. Chapter 2, invent perpetual crises. Chapter 3, if she resists, doubt her sanity. We both laughed, the kind that's half hurt, half compassion. Did you ever feel bad about shutting them off? I spoke softly. Every single day for the first 3 months, she admitted. But then things started to change. My daughter got a second job. Her husband stopped wasting money. They learned to survive. And eventually, they learned something else, that I'm a person, not a resource. Her story lit a small flame of hope inside me. Maybe one day Max and Lena would see that too. That afternoon, I did something I'd put off for much too long. I went to my husband's grave. The cemetery was still, serene. A location untainted by guile or shame. His headstone appeared a bit worn, and a flush of embarrassment washed over me. Sitting beside it, I whispered, Robert, my love, I think I lost myself for a while. When you passed away, I gave all my love to Max, trying to fill his world with what you couldn't. But by doing so, I neglected to live my own life. The breeze rustled softly through the branches, and for an instant, I could almost sense him there, listening. Our son, I said, my voice cracking. He's not the boy we'd hoped for. Or perhaps he is, and I simply refused to notice. But I've learned, Robert. I've learned the most difficult lesson of all. I scrubbed his grave clean, put new flowers in the places the old ones were beginning to wilt, and sat there, just existing. No hurry, no dread, no crisis waiting back in the house. Just calm. When I eventually made it back home, 3 vehicles were parked in front of my gate. My heart was racing, but this time, I didn't lose my head. I opened the security app. There they were, Max, Lena, and 2 people I didn't recognize. All 4 of them yelling, gesturing in the direction of my house. I didn't emerge. I instead grabbed the phone and rang Mr. Weber, my lawyer. Mr. Weber, they're back again, with some other people this time. What do I do? Get back in the car, Mrs. Richter, he ordered. I'll be right there. And don't worry, I already obtained a temporary restraining order. They can't legally be on your property. In a matter of minutes, 2 police vehicles screeched up beside Mr. Weber's. I sat in my window and watched it happen, my son standing there, gesturing with his arms, his face red with anger. Lena sobbing, as melodramatic as ever. But this time their tears didn't move me. Not anymore. One of the officers approached my car and knocked gently on the window. Ma'am, he said. You can step out now. You're safe. The officer's tone was firm, calm. Your guests are going to depart right away, ma'am. As I got out of the car, Max yelled from the other side of the street, his anger shaking his voice. Mom, this is absurd. We're your family. You can't call the police on your own son. I gazed at him with a calmness I didn't realize I still possessed. Family. I whispered. Family doesn't threaten lawsuits for mental incompetence. Family doesn't burglarize a mother's house. And family doesn't treat their mother like an ATM. Lena yelled back, crying streaks on her face. You're going to pay us everything you owe us. We have bills you co-signed for. You can't just leave us in the lurch. I hadn't even had time to answer when Mr. Weber's voice sliced through the melee like a knife. Mrs. Brooks, he informed Lena coldly. All further communication will be routed through my office. And I recommend that you talk with your attorney before threatening collection. My client has complete records of every voluntary payment made in the past 3 years. Silence. Max's jaw clamped, but there was nothing to say. They drove away in their cars, enraged but beaten. I wasn't shaking for the first time in months. I felt safe. Protected. Not legally, but emotionally. That night, Eleanor invited me to eat. Her daughter was there, and for the first time in years, I got to see what true family love was. They conversed, laughed, inquired about one another's day. Money was never mentioned once. When her daughter departed, I spoke softly to Eleanor. I wanted that with Max as well. She smiled sweetly. Perhaps one day you will have it. But first he needs to learn you're human, not a salary. I went to bed that night optimistic. Really optimistic. The following days passed quietly, too quietly. The cameras recorded Max and Lena's car going by my house, repeatedly. Sometimes slowly, sometimes stopping for minutes, looking. Mr. Weber had counseled me. Keep everything in writing. So I recorded a log, date, time, length. Each visit makes our case stronger, he'd told me. And I trusted him. And then Friday morning arrived. I was drinking coffee when the doorbell rang. On the camera, a neat-looking young woman, holding a folder and flashing that professional sort of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. Good morning, Mrs. Renata Richter, she said. I'm from the Office of Senior Services. We've had a report that you may be in danger, and we need to do a wellness check. My blood ran cold. They had brought it to the next level. It was no longer manipulation. They had called the cops. May I see your ID? I asked. She produced it, official. I'm social worker Mrs. Schmidt. May I come in? I knew turning her down would exacerbate matters. So I nodded and let her in. She sat down, spread out a form, and started to read. Mrs. Richter, we've received reports that you've exhibited unusual financial behavior changes, cut off contact with your loved ones, and installed unnecessary security systems. You've also allegedly declined medical and legal assistance from loved ones. Each word was like a knife. The ideal script, scripted by Lena. Mrs. Schmidt, I replied calmly. I would appreciate it if I could call my lawyer before responding to any questions. This isn't a legal interrogation, she replied hastily. It's a wellness check. If you have nothing to hide, there shouldn't be a problem. That sentence. The same one that all manipulators use. If you have nothing to hide. I rose to my feet. Miss, I will not respond to a single question without my lawyer here. In 20 minutes, Mr. Weber appeared. The instant he glanced at her ID, his expression stiffened. Miss Schmidt, he spoke in an icy tone. I do hope you have a court order. Because my client is represented in court, and any improper investigation would amount to harassment. Mrs. Schmidt's assertiveness wavered. Sir, we've had complaints from concerned family members. What family? Mr. Weber cut in curtly. The same family who attempted to deceive her into signing power of attorney? The same family who invaded her house? Who emotionally blackmailed her for years? He unzipped his briefcase and placed a folder on the table. Here, he said. Evidence of every withdrawal. $33,400 total. Records of harassment. Documentation of psychological and financial abuse. If anyone should be investigated, it's them. Mrs. Schmidt riffled through the documents, her face changing from suspicion to unease to shame. At last she raised her head. Mrs. Richter, she whispered. Can you tell me why you cut your son off financially? I gazed back at her, because I finally realized the truth. They weren't my family now. They were my dependents, and I was their hostage. I wasn't their mother, just a breathing wallet. She blinked. But don't you have a responsibility to your family? I flashed with anger, not vocally, but deep and icy. My responsibility, I said, was to raise my son, teach him, and get him to the point where he could live his own life. That's what I did. He's 35, married and in good health. It's not my responsibility to subsidize his adulthood. It's my privilege to stop. Mr. Weber nodded. Tell me, Miss Schmidt, is it usual for a 35-year-old man to have his 71-year-old mother pay rent? She didn't reply. She didn't need to. After a moment of silence, she shut her folder. Mrs. Richter, thank you for your time. Everything appears in order. She slipped out quietly, almost shamed, and when the door shut behind her, I felt something lift within me. The fear, the guilt, the manipulation, all gone. That night, I sat on my porch with Eleanor, the sun going down. The air was still. The world was silent. I looked at her and smiled. For the first time in my life, I told her, I feel really free. Eleanor smiled at me. Welcome back to your own life, Renata. I drive myself home. I explained to Mrs. Schmidt in a level tone. I have a tidy home, I have friends, I attend church, and I'm involved in the community. I'm not alone and I'm not afraid. She nodded, scribbling notes. Do you take any medication? Just vitamins, I said. And now and then an aspirin. No prescriptions, no illnesses. Mr. Weber leaned forward. My client recently underwent a full medical and psychological evaluation as part of our legal defense. She's in perfect mental and physical health. Mrs. Schmidt closed her folder gently. Mrs. Richter, she said, based on what I've seen and reviewed, there is no indication you're at risk or need intervention. I'll be closing this case. And just like that, she left. For a long time, Mr. Weber and I sat there. Then he let out a sigh. Renata, this isn't over. They're escalating. Max and Lena are spending money they don't even have to try and prove you're incompetent. I frowned. So they're desperate? He nodded. Yes. But desperate people are dangerous. If they can find a sympathetic judge, or a doctor who'll lie for them, they might persuade the court to appoint you a guardian. And that would put them in charge of your money. The very idea sent shivers down my spine. Having my freedom taken away from me, not because of sickness or old age, but by my own child, was my nightmare come true. After noon, I phoned my sister Diana. She listened quietly as I spilled out the whole tale. When I'd finished, she said, Renata, don't you realize how low they'll go for money? They're ruining their own reputation, wasting cash they don't even have, just for access to your bank account. That's not family, that's obsession. Her words struck me bluntly, and stuck. Max and Lena had finally revealed themselves to me. No longer illusion, no longer hope of reconciliation. I had never been a mother, a beloved in their eyes. I had always just been money on legs. It hurt to realize, but it set me free. For the first time, I did not feel guilty for standing up for myself. They had established my point. My happiness and calm were of no concern to them in relation to my bank account. That night, Eleanor stopped by with a surprise. She brought her garden club friends, Cynthia, Maria, Carmen, and Alfreda. All of them, I discovered, had experienced something similar. Maria had a brother who kept asking for loans. Carmen had severed ties with a daughter, who visited only when she needed assistance. And Alfreda, 80 years old, yet with fire in her eyes, informed us that she'd rewritten her will upon hearing her grandchildren refer to her as their retirement plan. We laughed and wept and swapped the scars inflicted by people we once loved. Once, I confess quietly, what hurts the most isn't losing the money, it's realizing the love was never real. Alfreda grasped my hand and smiled. True love, Renata, she told me, can't be purchased or sold. If you had to pay for it, then it was never love. Her words calmed my heart as medicine would. She was right. I had paid for attention, not affection. I had funded an illusion. You know what I've learned? I told her. Having people around you that don't love you is lonelier than being alone. The room went quiet for a moment. Then we all laughed. We celebrated wisdom and freedom. After everyone had gone home, I sat in my garden at night under the stars. They glowed brighter than ever. Or perhaps, I was seeing clearly for the first time. For the first time in my life, I was financially independent. No strings. No shame. No coercion. I could finally live for me. I could travel, paint, give, invest, dream. Freedom. It felt like hope. For weeks I lived in tranquility. I painted flowers on my new easel, lunched with friends, read the paper in the mornings, and smiled at the little, quiet pleasures of being alone. I believed the storm was gone. I believed I'd won. Peace never comes with greed. One Thursday morning, while I was painting, the doorbell rang. Mr. Weber was standing there, his face pale, his voice somber. "Renata," he said softly, "we have to talk." I laid down my brush. "What did you do?" He inhaled deeply. "Max and Lena have filed an official complaint in family court. They're requesting a judge to rule that you're mentally incompetent and appoint a legal guardian to handle your money." The world stopped turning. The hues faded from my canvas. I could hardly manage to speak. "So they want to control my life." Mr. Weber nodded sternly. "They don't want to anymore, Renata. They've begun." Tob continued. "If the judge believes you're no longer capable of managing your own affairs," Mr. Weber said gravely, "he could legally appoint Max as your guardian. That would give him complete control over your money." I sat down slowly, feeling the air leave my lungs. My own son, my flesh and blood, was trying to legally steal my life. Not through deception or charm this time, but through the courts. "Mr. Weber," I whispered. "What evidence could they possibly have?" "You fais metma." "I'm fine." He shook his head. "They've filed statements from 3 witnesses who say you've been behaving strangely. They've added unpaid doctor bills, claimed to be yours, and medication records that you stockpiled, but failed to take." I stared shocked. "That's a lie. I don't know any doctor. And I hardly ever take aspirin." "I know," he told me. "But they've made enough up to make it seem real. They even used your refusal to undergo a psychiatric test as evidence of decline in mental state. I was ill. They had turned my instinct for self-preservation into evidence that I required protection from myself. Their tactic was fiendish." "Who are the witnesses?" I demanded. He looked down at the file. "Lena, naturally. A neighbor, Mr. Davis, and a pharmacist, Mr. Green." My heart sank. Mr. Davis, the cranky guy on the other side of the road who disliked when visitors stopped close to his driveway, and Mr. Green, my pharmacist, who had always been courteous. What could he possibly object to? "I have to speak with Mr. Green," I said assertively. "Something is not right." We went to the pharmacy that afternoon together. Mr. Green blinked in surprise upon seeing me. "Mrs. Richter. Nice to see you." "Mr. Green," I said cautiously, "I was informed you signed a report stating that I acted strangely on my medications." His face reddened. "Mrs. Richter, your daughter-in-law visited a few weeks back inquiring about your medications. She indicated she was concerned about you. I explained to her you only purchase vitamins and aspirin, but she manipulated this into a story that you were not taking care of yourself." Mr. Weber spoke up. "Did you sign anything?" She brought a document for the insurance company, or so she told me. I signed it without taking the time to read it. I had no notion it was part of a lawsuit. My heart ached for him. He'd been duped like the rest of us. "Mr. Green," I said kindly, "I must have a written statement stating the truth, that I have absolutely no medication problems at all." "Of course," he responded at once. "I'm sorry for the confusion." One lie down, 2 to go. Then we went to talk to Mr. Davis. The man opened his door with a huff of annoyance. "What do you want?" Mr. Weber replied in a smooth tone. "Sir, we know you made a statement regarding my client's conduct. Could you tell us what you witnessed?" "Gladly," he scoffed. "She's been behaving nuts. Putting up cameras all over the place, screaming at her relatives, having strangers over like it's a freak show." I breathed deeply. "Mr. Davis, do you have any idea why I put up those cameras?" "No, and I don't care." To protect myself, I replied softly. From my son and daughter-in-law. The same ones who entered my house without consent. He guffawed. That's what a lunatic would say. I saw then, there was no arguing with him. His script of me was already set, colored by the same manipulators who had colored me mad. That night, Mr. Weber and I sat at my kitchen table with paperwork and cold coffee all around. Renata, he said, we require our own psychiatric assessment, conducted by a trusted professional. I know someone, Dr. Moore. She's respected and reasonable. And what if Max and Lena bribe the judge? I asked cynically. What if it's all for nothing? He gazed at me. The system is not perfect. But it's not rotten to the core either. We'll battle this, with truth and evidence. The following day, I met Dr. Moore, a middle-aged woman with perceptive, caring eyes. Mrs. Richter, she said softly, I'm going to ask you some questions to test your memory, your reasoning ability and judgment. Take your time. For 2 hours she examined me, logic puzzles, money, emotional type questions, even arithmetic. When she finished, she beamed. Mrs. Richter, your score is outstanding. You're mentally acute, well above average for your age. Doctor, I asked softly, why do you believe my family is doing this? Her face softened. This is a textbook case of elder financial exploitation. Unfortunately, it's more prevalent than most people imagine. I felt vindicated and yet empty as I left her office. The truth was on my side, but the betrayal tasted like fire. That night, Eleanor convened an emergency meeting of our garden club. When I informed them about the suit, they reacted with outrage. Renata will testify for you, Maria declared. You're brighter than half the folks we know, Cynthia added. And our sage elder Alfreda clasped my hands and spoke. My dear, what your children are doing is nothing new. Greedy heirs have been proclaiming parents mad for centuries. But you have something they didn't, evidence, friends, and guts. Her words brought stability to my heart. I no longer felt so alone. I had a battalion of tough women behind me. Witnesses to my toughness, my clarity, my rebirth. This no longer was a struggle for my money. It was a struggle for my dignity. And I was willing to fight to the bitter end. You know what finally broke me? The knowledge that Max and Lena were willing to burn bridges between us. For money. Even if I somehow managed to forgive everything they'd done up until then, there was no going back from this. Cynthia, always the voice of sense, just let out a sigh and said, perhaps that's for the best, Renata. At least now you know what they really are, and you can finally behave yourself. That evening, for the first time since this hell started, I let myself weep. But it was not the crying from unhappiness. It was sorrow, mourning the son I had imagined, the fantasy of a loving family, and the delusion that love, once unconditional, ever was returned. And in the midst of all those tears, something fierce awakened within me, an unbreakable resolve. They might try to take away my wealth, my autonomy, even my reputation, but they would not take my dignity. They would not conquer. The war had begun officially. And this time, I was prepared to battle. The day of the trial. 3 weeks passed before the day of the hearing arrived. I awakened before dawn, wearing my best black suit, and stood before the mirror. This wasn't about establishing my mental sanity. It was about fighting for my dignity as a human being. Today, the court would determine if I could be left to navigate my own life, or if I was going to be reduced to a mere helpless figure defined by my bank statement. Mr. Weber came at 7 a.m. to review our last strategy. Recall, Renata, he told me in a soothing tone. The onus is on them. They have to establish you're incompetent. We just have to demonstrate that you are not. I nodded, but there was a question left in the air. And what if the judge is biased too? Judge Miller, he answered, is known for being fair. I reviewed his past cases. No, he does not automatically side with families. He believes in justice, particularly for seniors. Inside the courtroom, we arrived at the courthouse at precisely 9 a.m. There they were, Max wearing a new suit, Lena wearing black as if to a funeral. Perhaps she was our family's funeral. When our gazes met, Max hastened to glance away. But Lena's icy glare fixed on me, measured, unemotional. For her, this was not about love or concern. It was a transaction. A business agreement. Their attorney, a gray-haired man with the polished assurance of one who's won too many cases like this one, stood to speak. Your Honor, he intoned solemnly, Mrs. Renata Richter has exhibited a definite mental breakdown in the past few months. She has cut off her family for no reason, implemented unnecessary security precautions, and come under the sway of manipulative intruders. Each sentence was a knife, distorting my independence into paranoia, my strength into confusion. My liberty was being redefined as a symptom of madness. The performances began. Then came the witnesses. Lena went first, and she performed her part like it was second nature to her. She cried as she testified. She's completely changed, she testified, her voice shaking. She's paranoid, hostile, estranged from her family. She's broken and it breaks my heart. I just want her to receive the treatment she needs. Lies. Expertly crafted lies packaged in crocodile tears. But when Mr. Weber rose to stand for cross-examination, her veneer started to crack. Mrs. Schuster, he started. When did you last phone my client without demanding money? Lena went stiff. We discussed numerous issues. Can you provide a date? He asked insistently. I don't recall. He went on, his voice even but razor sharp. Is it true that you and your husband got married without inviting my client? It was a tiny ceremony, she said softly. And when my client inquired about it, didn't you inform her that you had invited special people only? Her face went red. Those words were taken out of context. Oh, Weber leaned in. What's the correct context for informing your mother-in-law that she is not special? The ensuing silence spoke volumes. The son's betrayal. Then there was Max. Witnessing him put his hand up and promised to tell the truth before lying about me in front of everyone. It was the worst agony of my existence. My mother is always kind, he started, his words precise. But now she's unpredictable. People are taking advantage of her. Mr. Weber intervened again. By the book as always. Mr. Richter, how much money has your mother given you in the past 3 years? I don't know, Max growled. Would $33,400 ring true? He hesitated. Perhaps she's always kind. And how many times have you been to see her without making a demand for money? The courtroom silence was oppressive. Is it true, Weber went on, that you and your wife forced entry into her residence and rummaged through her personal documents? We were concerned, Max muttered. And did you take a lawyer with you to intimidate her into signing a power of attorney? We merely wanted to assist her in controlling things. Do you at 35 really need your 71-year-old mother to pay your rent? Max had no response. Truths unfold. Mr. Davis, the gossipy neighbor, testified next, calling me unstable and strange. But on cross-examination, it turned out he'd never even talked to me. His testimony was nothing but rumor, tainted by his own bitterness. Dr. Lehman attempted to make my refusal to take his exam evidence of my breakdown. But then Mr. Weber responded by presenting Dr. Moore's assessment, tactful, professional documentation that my mind was sound. At last, our witnesses testified. Mr. Green, the pharmacist, told how Lena had duped him into signing a false report on my drug usage. His candid clarification revealed just how devious my children had been. Dr. Moore went on the stand second. She was calm, professional, and assured. She attested to my great mental status, exhibiting all the results of the cognitive tests that I had finished perfectly. Next was Mr. Summers from the hardware store. He described how my money choices, such as stopping automatic transfers, were utterly rational and dealt with responsibly. Each of these testimonies wore down the erroneous portrait Max and Lena had created. Eleanor and my garden club friends testified strongly on my behalf. They told about the clarity, the vitality, and the emotional balance they had seen in me. Their testimonies were spontaneous. They were born of truth, of friendship, of standing with me for weeks when my own family had rejected me. I stood up with all the grace 71 years of living had earned me. My walk was steady, my heart strong. I proceeded to the witness stand, not as a victim, but as a woman who had lived, learned, and at last found her voice. Mr. Weber started softly, allowing me to recount my tale in my own words. Of the $33,400 I'd paid out over 3 years, The humiliation of being excluded from their wedding, the constant manipulating, the intrusions into my privacy, the threats of lawsuits. And then there was the question that lingered. "Mrs. Richter," asked Mr. Weber gently, "why did you cease providing your son and daughter-in-law with financial help?" I breathed deeply, because I realized finally that what I was getting from them wasn't love. I declared, my voice firm and clear. It was a transaction, a business deal masquerading as family. My cash was always welcome, but I wasn't. He nodded. "Do you regret making that decision?" "I only regret that it took me so long to make it." Max's attorney attempted to unsettle me on cross-examination, repeating the same questions in circles, hoping to catch me off guard. But each response was quick, concise, and level. When he suggested my new friends had manipulated me, I stared him in the face and responded, "For the first time in years, I have friends who respect me, not my wallet." You could sense the silence in that courtroom. It was the silence of truth being heard at last. At closing arguments, Max's attorney made a last-ditch effort. He portrayed me as a dazed old woman who was being manipulated by outsiders. But Mr. Weber's rebuttal, it was absolutely devastating. "Your Honor," he said firmly, "what we've seen here today is not the case of an incompetent woman, but the story of one who finally found the courage to free herself from years of emotional and financial abuse. The plaintiffs have presented no valid medical proof of mental deterioration. What they've demonstrated is basic frustration, because the individual who supported their existence has finally made up her mind to take back her own." Judge Miller retired to consider. 2 hours seemed like 2 years. When he came back, his face was serious but unclouded. "After examining all evidence," he started, "it is the finding of this court that Mrs. Renata Richter is competent and capable of taking care of her own affairs. Professional assessments verify her mental acuity. Her financial decisions, as inconvenient as they are to her family, are sane, legal, and her prerogative." My heart began racing in my chest. "And in addition," the judge said, "the court determines that this suit was prompted by economic interest and not by concern. The application for guardianship is denied." I had won. Not only the case, but my freedom, my dignity, and my right to live life on my own terms. Outside the courthouse, I spotted Max and Lena angrily fighting with their lawyer. Lena glanced at me with hate before walking away. Max stuck around for a moment, his expression conflicted. Maybe a glimmer of regret, maybe not. Either way, it was too late. That evening, Eleanor had everyone over to my place. My friends packed the room with laughter, warmth, and champagne. "To justice," Eleanor said. "To freedom. And to powerful women who support each other." Alfreda, with her wise old smile, took my hands and whispered, "Renata, today you did not merely win a trial. You won back your life." She was correct. For the first time in years, the future seemed entirely mine. I could travel. I could love. I could create. I could live free of fear, guilt, and manipulation. 3 months afterwards, I sold the old house and settled in a lovely apartment within walking distance from the city center. I contributed half of my savings to groups that safeguard the elderly from their own family's exploitation. I used the remainder to finally lead the life I had always dreamt of, visiting Europe, painting, volunteering, and enjoying life. I never received any news from Max or Lena. Word finally came to me that they had cut back to a smaller apartment, and Lena had acquired her first job in years. Perhaps, just perhaps, adversity would show them the value that my largesse never could, the self-respect of honest employment and self-sufficiency. At times, late at night, I sit on my balcony and gaze up at the stars. I consider the woman I used to be, fearful, dependent, eager to purchase affection. She is not here anymore. She is replaced by someone who has been reborn, someone who knows a mighty truth. Love has no price tag, and freedom isn't too costly. My name is Renata Richter, and I am 72 years old. And I've finally discovered the most vital thing of all. The person you need to love and take care of is yourself. If you were touched by this story, please support me by liking and subscribing for more real-life stories like mine. And ask me, what would you have done instead? Leave your answer in the comments. I just adore reading them. Until next time, with love and gratitude, Envy.